I was a teen drug addict living on the streets, and now I'm a 7-figure business owner. My name is Shani Taylor. I'm 39 years old. I live in Sydney, Australia, and I'm the founder of Shani Taylor Consulting, and we provide business and sales services. I lived in a small town in New South Wales of Australia. And so basically everybody knew everyone, and school was really horrible for me. I was picked on constantly, partly because I lacked confidence from having such an unstable and chaotic home life. And so I was just generally scared to be out in the world because home didn't feel very secure or safe. And so of course the world didn't feel very secure or safe as well. But then also partly I was just a really easy target because I was dreadful looking. I was tall. I was exceptionally tall in comparison to everybody else my age. I had bright red auburn hair, so I was a natural redhead. I was super skinny, so tall and also quite lanky. I had freckles, and I also looked like a boy, and there's photos of me I just look like a boy. And so I was just a really easy target for bullying because I was unusual and I really lacked confidence. And so, what led to the taking of the drugs was so many different things. It's not like you just wake up one day and go, oh, I might just take drugs. It's very much to do with your upbringing, but the defining moment that led to me taking drugs was I lost my virginity at 16 to a guy who I thought I was madly in love with. And shortly after that, he broke up with me saying, I'm a drug addict and I'd rather take drugs than be with you. And so I became very, very curious as to what would be better than being in a relationship with me, because he's saying, I'm choosing drugs over you. And that was kind of the defining moment where I wanted to go and explore. But with the wisdom that I have now, I can see that it wasn't just that particular moment that led to me taking drugs. There were multiple factors that contributed over the course of my life where ultimately I was just searching for a home. I was searching for somewhere to belong, and it was my desire to belong somewhere was so misplaced because I didn't feel that I belonged at home in my family. I didn't feel that I belonged at school, and that sense of loneliness, I was looking to feel something. And so there were all these moments that were kind of stacking up. So in addition to having a boyfriend who said that drugs were way better than being with me, one of those other kind of defining moments or contributing factors was definitely that I actually grew up thinking that someone was my dad who wasn't actually my dad. I also had sisters and he was their dad. So I was like the odd one out in the family. And then I was the odd one out at school. And then I wasn't wanted by the boyfriend that I lost my virginity to. And so there were just all these factors where it was like looking for a home.
Your support allows us to keep creating these amazing videos, so please like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
It's really hard for people to believe because when you look at me now, you're like, there's no way this girl has ever had a problem with confidence. There's no way this girl has taken drugs. And you'll see the photos and it's like two completely different people. How I felt was I felt scared to be in the world. I had a very volatile home life because one of my mother, I believe she had undiagnosed PTSD from, significant trauma in her own childhood. And so you just never knew what her mood was. And you were constantly walking around on eggshells and you were scared to speak because there was often ramifications. And so again, this is why people are like, there's no way you had an issue with confidence. But for me, I was many years, I was scared to speak because it came with physical ramifications depending on the mood that person was in at the time. So I spent a lot of time in my room on my own, reading books, writing poetry, and trying to find sanctuary within my own inner world. So the very interesting thing about my situation is that when I first started putting needles in my arm, I wasn't the one doing it because I didn't even know how to do it. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows how to put a needle in a vein. You've got to be taught, right? So it was actually the drug dealer or the person that I was getting the drugs from that was putting the needle in my arm for me. And there was just a sense of relief because the thing about taking drugs intravenously is that it goes into your system straight away. So it's not like, maybe taking a pill or smoking some marijuana and then you kind of sit there and you wait for an effect. It's almost instantaneous. So I was kicked out of home, which is why I ended up homeless, because as I said, my mother and I did not have the best of relationships. And so I was actually kicked out of home. And at that time, she didn't know that I was taking drugs. She kicked me out for her own reasons. It was nothing to do with, she didn't know what I was doing. And how I funded the drugs was I was sleeping with the drug dealer. Yeah, it was a bit of both. There was a bit of couch surfing, so not really knowing where you were going to be that night. And also there were times where I was asleep on the streets. Basically what had happened was my friendship circle ended up being just people that were taking drugs. But I had this one friend who had been the friendship that I had at high school. And she wasn't shooting up drugs. She wasn't in that circle. She tried to get me out of that. She even at one point contacted my mother and told my mother what was going on, which actually ended up separating me further from her, because then all of a sudden, like when you're on drugs, you're not thinking straight anyway, because then I felt like I couldn't trust her because she went and told my mum, but it was just her trying to get somebody to help because we were still kids. So there wasn't really much she could do then anyway. So I took drugs for about 6.5 years. The thing that made me want to and made me commit. So there's a difference between knowing that you want to change your life versus actually doing it, right? And so the commitment for me was, I had known from a very young age that I always wanted to have my own children, because again, it was that belonging and wanting to have something to belong to. And so, I think for me I was maybe like 12 when I really knew I wanted to have a family. And so that was always within me. And, the moment of reckoning or realization really was that I got to a point, and I'd also met a man who I wanted to have his child. And looking back at it now, I really think that I was subconsciously strategic in knowing that if I decided to have a child, that would be the thing that would make me turn my life around, because I knew that I wasn't prepared to do it for just me. But I knew that if I decided to have a child, that purpose becomes bigger, and I'm prepared to make that commitment for that child rather than just doing it for me. So I decided to have a child. And it was really about making the conscious decision. Like my son, who's now 16, like I planned to have him. He wasn't an accident. So eventually it stopped being every single day. So yes, it was every single day, but probably around the 5th year, it started to become less and less, meaning it would move into just kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and then it would just become the weekend. And so it started to calm down or taper off a little bit. And then there would be periods where I would be very committed to trying to stop altogether. But the problem is, when you're in a social circle, that's the thing that you have that's always brought you together, including, by the way, the father of my son. Like the common interest that we had was taking drugs, right? And so the social network, that was the thing to do. So there were times where I would try to go days or weeks with not doing it, but you would very quickly fall back into that pattern because you had a social circle that was just full of drug takers. So for me, part of it was also having to say goodbye to people, places, and situations that were keeping me stuck in that lifestyle and not helping me propel to who I wanted to become. So I was living with my partner at the time, and he had a home, and there was a degree of stability there. There's been a whole bunch of stuff that happened. I had my son. That was really the driving force for a long time. And so, I got a job in recruitment, and I worked my way up into a management position. And so I was very, very career focused, and really just like, because I had left school in year 10. So I hadn't finished school. I had no high school certificate. I had nothing. But I very much wanted to, having work and being purposeful in a career, it kind of gave me a sense of self-worth. I decided to go to uni. So as a mature age student, had never, didn't finish school, decided I'd go to uni. I did an undergrad in sociology, which I did in the space of 2 years instead of 3. So, I got through it a lot quicker. And then I decided I would go and do a post-grad law degree, because at this point I thought I was going to go and save the world from the injustices that, I'd had to experience. And I thought that I would become a criminal defense lawyer. But I got about halfway through my Juris Doctor in law, and I realized that the reason I was doing it was just because I was trying to save the world instead of just focusing on saving me. So I finished the law degree because, of course, you would. Why wouldn't you? But while I was doing that, I also went and took a course on how to start an online business. And it was there that it just made sense for me to start my own thing, because I was a changed person. Like, all of the trauma of 28 odd years and all of the growth, I couldn't see myself going back and working for someone else and, clocking on and being in an office environment. Like, it just didn't make sense. And so the way that we landed here with this business was me drawing on the skills and the sales skills that I had from being in sales roles, from also running other people's businesses like the recruitment agency, and also just my drive and determination matched with the fact that I wanted to be able to help people create a life that they love by sharing their gift. That's what I was able to create. I don't think you ever not have money worries, because it's a state of mind before it's a tangible bank balance. And I think that in order for anyone to be successful, if we look at, some of the world's most successful people, I think that part of the reason why they have such big success is because it's never enough. And so it's like this really interesting way of being, where there's a part of me that goes, wow, I'm so incredible and I've done so much. And then there's another part that goes, it's still not enough. And I think as long as you can embrace both of those parts and use them healthily to your advantage, that's how you build more success. You have to truly believe that you can do anything, but you also have to think, no matter what I do, there's still more to be done. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep growing. Yeah, so it's a service-based business, and we have clients in more than 18 countries around the world. So we operate in all of the time zones, and we have the most incredible, heart-centered humans that come and work with us, who are so dedicated to also wanting to help humanity through their gift and through their service, right? So the way my business started compared to how it is now is pretty different. When I first started in my business, in the first 30 days, I went from 0 to 5 figures in 30 days, and I had no audience. I had no idea how to create content. And I didn't even have a really clear offer. I just knew that failure was not an option, right? So I got up. At that time, I was getting up at 3 a.m. every day, and I'd work until midnight. And I was just in conversation every single day with as many people as possible. And not from that place of I'm here to sell you something. It was just like, I'm going to show up, build relationships, and it's going to happen. Because people are the lifeblood to anything that you want to create. You want to create a community, you want to make sales, you want to grow a business, you want to have a family. People need people. So being in relationship with people, you're always going to create magic. So when I first started my business, it was me, and all I was doing was providing done for you content creation. So I was speaking to coaches and consultants and service-based businesses and offering to them that I would create their social media content. So that's how it started. And fast forward to 3.5 years later, I now coach and mentor people on sales, strategy, content, mindset, and ultimately how to have the time of their life growing their business. For me, we are always going to have pain. There is always going to be challenge. And so for me, it's like, do I want the pain of discipline now or the pain of regret? I don't want to get to my deathbed and look back and go, I know I could have done more. I don't think I'm going to get to my deathbed. I don't think that the words are going to come out of my mouth where I wish I got an extra sleep. I feel like the words are going to be, I wish I stayed up an extra hour. So I'd rather put in the discipline now to create the vision and to make an impact and to leave humanity and leave my legacy, in a really beautiful way. And if that means that I sleep a little bit less, I think I'm going to be okay with that at the end of my life. I would say thank you. Like, I'm here not in spite of her, but because of her. I'm here because even though she was taking drugs, even though she was dissociating, even though she felt pain, deep within her, there was a part that had so much audacity and so much belief that she could change her life. And I don't regret anything that I've done, and I'll speak about it openly, because every little thing that we do, whether we're prepared to admit it or not, has served us, and I would thank her. Without a doubt, my biggest achievement is my son. I look at the man that he's already become, and I just feel so incredibly inspired to look at him and how he shows up in the world. Sorry. He's most definitely the best thing that I'll ever do in my life. I live by this, and I say it to anyone who will listen, and that is, you have got to cultivate your own conviction. And conviction is, you don't wait for the world to tell you who you are. You go and tell the world who you are, and you trust that it'll catch up, because it will.